What's going on, champs and champettes? It's FireMonkey here, and in today's YouTube video, we're going to be talking about Fortnite 2025 once again. I know we've been talking about it a lot in the previous few videos, but we're going to be talking about Horde Rush this time around, a returning LTM that has returned for Fortnite quite a few times, and how it might actually be changing this year in order to make it a little bit more refreshing instead of what we had before, where they just kind of bring it back over and over again, where the only real refreshment we actually had with the mode in recent years was them accidentally forgetting to put the zero build version of the playlist in the game last year, causing them to have to force their hand into releasing the building enabled version, which luckily still worked and allowed us to still enjoy Horde Rush, but it was one of the only main changes they've really done, other than adding, the augment system into the game. Now, there have been some files re-added relating to augments specifically for Horde Rush. Will it be used? I'm currently uncertain, but it is still interesting to see how, at the very least, they still have those old files and they still have it linked properly to Horde Rush, to the point where they could potentially allow it to be in that Horde Rush mode, despite us now having the reworked version of augments being boons and medallions. But I'm not here to make this video to talk about boons, medallions, and all that type of stuff. No, instead I want to talk about a new difficulty and potential change coming to Horde Rush for 2025. So in the files for the newest season, they actually added something called a endless mode difficulty for Horde Rush, which appears to be like the similar Horde Rush format. You have the different rounds, wave after wave after wave, where you go to different POIs every so often, and you have to go ahead and defend against the Horde, which gets harder and harder, up until the very end when you have to fight the Caretaker. And in this endless version, it appears that you don't really have a caretaker fight per se, but instead you do have to deal with endless waves of horde enemies that end up coming at you non-stop, which at least right now in the files appear to still be the denizens, or the, I forget what they're called, the fiends or whatever, the zombies we've had before. That appears to still be the main focus enemy over in Horde Rush that we have to actually fight off against. Now, despite this, there have been some recent rumors and news regarding potentially the bugs being the whole entire, new Horde Rush enemy as it gets further in development and as they get closer to fully releasing it, but at least from what I could see in the files, there isn't anything right now that suggests that the new bug enemies that we're getting will be enabled for Horde Rush 2025. However, it would match the theme perfectly, and I definitely would love to see it in the game. With that said, however, what else can we tell you about this new endless mode? Well, I've tried looking in the files to get all the bits and pieces of information I could, so that you guys have everything you needed to know about this mode. However, there is a lot of stuff that's kind of in the vague territory, because we don't have all the bits and pieces of information, but here is what I was able to decipher. Firstly, when it comes to the actual mode itself, they have some indicators that detect if you're going ahead and playing in solos, duos, trios, or squads, and they mix that in with the actual endless mode difficulty selector in order to figure out how many fiends or enemies, I'll just call them zombies for this video for the sake of knowing what the Horde Rush is, how many of those are going to end up spawning and what type are going to be spawning. Now, I wasn't able to really find anything specifically about how many rounds there were. I was able to find some stuff regarding preparation phases between rounds, which appear to be nothing, right? It appears to be a situation where you'll load into Horde Rush, you'll jump out of the battle bus and everything else, but from that point when you jump out, there's no break from the waves, right? Right when a round ends, and the next round is going to begin, and it's going to be an endurance style thing where you're going to have to focus on being able to stay alive, you're going to have to focus on being able to refill your ammo and everything else. The storm should still move around to different locations every so often, but it is going to seem like a very harder form of what you would get in other games like Call of Duty Zombies, for example, where it's going to be endless. Now, of course, that can change when we get later in development and get more files related to this whole entire Horde Rush event going on in Fortnite, because we still don't have every single bit of information, but it does appear like it's going to be a system where as time goes on, and depending on how many friends you have playing with you, 1 to 4 players, you will have to deal with more and more increasingly harder waves of Horde Rush enemies without it actually going ahead and giving you a breather at any point, right? No actual breaks in between. And if they have the augment system, there is a chance that you would be stuck with whatever augments you select early on for the remainder of the game, giving more of a roguelike aspect to it, where you want to make sure early on you pick the best augments that aren't just going to help you with the early stages, but also the later stages as well, when they start spawning only the harder versions of the actual Horde Rush enemies to actually fight you. Now, on top of that, in the files, we have seen them re-add some interesting stuff regarding like Kato Thorn's kinetic blade, you know, the mythic weapons that we've had before, even the sideways rifle and stuff that is related to being used in Horde Rush previously. So there is a chance that we could see those specific versions return to the actual game in order to be used for Horde Rush, in order to be used for that whole entire game mode and everything else. But there still is, of course, a lot of stuff that we don't know yet, and it is still interesting to see that Horde Rush is going to return, but they're going to try putting more twist on it than they've done before, because I felt like they stagnated when it came to the whole entire aspect of, oh, let's just go ahead and throw Zero Belt in there and call it a day. They kind of had, you know, stagnated in that area. You know, there wasn't really much innovation or anything except for augments being ported over to that mode. So considering the fact that we have a lot of improvements now to Fortnite and a lot of different ways they can go ahead and take it, such as, you know, using the bugs and completely reworking Fortnite Horde Rush in order to work with bugs or the endless mode or any of the older mythic weapons or newer mythic weapons, it definitely can become a more entertaining mode where maybe you can go ahead and mix and match with your friends, use the in-game like scoring system to try figuring out who can survive the longest, whether it's solos, duos, trios, or squads, while also collecting, you know, like the point upgrade crystals and everything else, so that they're able to actually go ahead and, you know, get a higher score modifier, right? There's a lot of different ways they can take this, and I'm honestly excited to see how it goes, but it is at the very least known endless mode is being worked on. You know, it could get scrapped before it actually releases, but we do have images in the files and everything else to prove that it does exist, and it is something that appears to be, you know, available in squads, but also will have different difficulty modifiers, you know, depending if you're solo, duos, trios, or all the way up there in the max version of the mode. So let me know in the comments down below, what are you hoping for Horde Rush 2025 and Fortnitemares 2025? What do you think else that is in the realm of possibility of things that they could do in order to make it even more special? I definitely think that they're already kind of in the right pathway when it comes to making Horde Rush a lot more unique instead of just the same thing remodeled and brought back year after year. But of course, you know, maybe you guys have a different opinion, so let me know in the comments down below. Like the video if you liked it, dislike if you didn't like it, and I'll catch you guys tomorrow with another upload. So until then, peace out.